There is an educational movement that's been brewing for a number of years in the background, but it's beginning to get some legs, and it's the anti-test protest movement. There have been people complaining for years, ever since No Child Left Behind began really, that the standardized testing was becoming an onerous burden and was taking over the school curriculum and taking over our schools. But now parents, for the first time, are joining in on the ranks. A couple of weeks ago, there was a front page article in the Star that said more parents opting out of standardized tests. And it's a very good article from the AP, I believe, which talks about movements of parents in New York and in Washington, D.C., in Seattle, in Portland, Oregon, in Providence, Rhode Island, who are protesting along with their kids about this emphasis on tests. And what they're doing is they're opting out. They're saying, my child is not going to show up that day, or my child is going to show up but not take the test. And that's important that parents are doing it. You know, if teachers and if unions complain about the test, well, they're just malingerers and they're just lazy and they don't want to be held accountable. And if college education professors do the same thing, they're just ivory-towered eggheads, and who listens to them? But when parents complain about it, and many of these parents, by the way, have high-achieving kids who are doing just fine on the test, you know that there's something going on there, and people are going to have to pay attention, and that's very good. Now, I have a couple observations about this. The first one is the opt-out movement can't be simply about opting out. That's only a first stage. Because if a kid doesn't take the test, that kid is still going to that year take the pre-test, followed by test prep, followed by another pre-test to see if the test prep is taken, followed by another test prep, and finally, at the end of this cycle, they're going to take the actual test, and they'll be wasting all this time in the classroom, whether they take the actual test or not. They won't be getting enrichment, they won't be getting art, music, discussion, they won't be exploring ideas, doing those wonderful spontaneous things that there's not time enough in a classroom for if you've got to work on the test. So the goal really isn't to opt out, the goal is to minimize standardized testing. But unfortunately, and here's the other concern, right when people are beginning to say about No Child Left Behind, we're not that into you anymore, here comes the Common Core clashing against this movement. Now, the Common Core, as people are learning more and more about it, it's basically a set of standards, and I've got no problem with a set of suggested standards, but they come with very, very, very tough tests that are like No Child Left Behind testing on steroids. They're far more difficult. And just when people are beginning to say, maybe we shouldn't be doing No Child Left Behind and the emphasis on standardized testing, we're saying, but wait, now we have a new set of standards, a new set of tests, and so we're going to start this cycle over again. And I fear that that's going to happen unless there is a continuing effort, and there is one right now, to have Common Core protested against and possibly taken out of the picture, or at least put on blocks for a while. We'll see what happens. But meanwhile, I'm very encouraged about the fact that people are beginning to see on a larger scale, on a mass scale, that standardized testing is not the best thing for our children.